Hey, what's up, everybody? Here I am doing my review for Scream 7. Just got done watching it, and I gotta say that there's this part where Ghostface calls Sydney Prescott and tells her, um, "You have to come get your daughter," and it's at the heart, right? And she immediately knows that that's home, right? So she heads home, and I guess that comes from the expression "home is where the heart is." And I feel like that's Scream 7 in a nutshell, right? It's back to its heart. It's back to its home. I mean, Scream 6. I did my review on it 2 years ago, and I've watched on and off the Scream series. Um, but like for example, there's this scene at the beginning, right? Of Scream 7 where it's basically, well, not the beginning because the beginning is the typical scene where some randos or some random people are killed. Which actually head to the part where it gets kind of meta because they head to the part where um or to the house where supposedly like everything happened in Scream 1, which I guess is kind of like a Airbnb now. And anyway, after that scene, it's the typical scene, after the first chaotic scene where someone gets killed or like two people get killed or whatever. There's like a relaxing scene, but in that relaxing scene something happens that is like a jump scare or surprising or shocking. But after that jump scare, it turns out that it was just a false alarm. And in this case, it's now Sydney's daughter in her room, and the boyfriend is at the window and jump scares her, right? Um, and then, like, if you notice, Don't Fear the Reaper, the song plays while they're making out on the bed. So it was very nostalgic. Like the movie itself, it's self-referential, it's meta. So it even mentions that it's nostalgic. I think I saw somewhere that it got like a 30% rating on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. I don't know why. I don't know if people were expecting something different. Maybe because of Scream 6, they were expecting like some innovation or something like that. Sometimes I would even think like, what if they made Gail Weathers the Ghostface killer? Or what if they did reveal the true identity of the Ghostface killer, like in the beginning or the middle of the movie? Which, spoiler alert, they do in this movie, but it's not actually the Ghostface killer in this seventh entry of the series. There are actually three Ghostface killers, and one of them gets killed like pretty much at the beginning of the movie. But they even tell themselves like, this is too easy. One thing that did bother me about Sydney though is that as soon as she knows that it's not over and they need to get to the bottom of things, they need to find out who truly is the Ghostface killer or the Ghostface killers in this case. She just leaves her husband, like, to fend for himself. And her husband is a police officer, so I guess she can kind of infer or deduce that he'll take care of himself. But spoiler alert, he doesn't, and he ends up getting stabbed, but he ends up surviving at the end of the movie. Um, which is kind of a little bit ridiculous. To me, this movie was a solid 8 on the rating scale of 1 to 10 because of things like that. I also felt like as soon as Gale Weather comes in, I felt like Gale Weathers does kind of return to her original, support character or second character or background character role where she's like a reporter. And it makes sense, right? Because I feel like that's when the movies of Scream or when the Scream saga is at its best, right? When everyone is in their role. Gale Weathers' team, the reporters are there. They kind of try to do a little bit of comic relief. I don't really felt like it worked. They got to a point. I mean, they did make me laugh at one point, but I felt like they were trying too hard. when Gale Weathers shows up, she's trying too hard, um, but eventually she just becomes like the supporting character for Sydney, who's the main protagonist, who's the main character. And in this case, it's pretty much like Sydney's story and her daughter's story. There was an emotional scene I felt, which was, the fact that her daughter's name is Tatum, and Tatum is the name of Sydney's friend who was killed by Ghostface, I guess, in the first movie. I gotta rewatch the first one because I don't know who Tatum is. But anyway, in that case, it was a little bit sad when she was, and kind of intense too, when basically she's trying to get her daughter to be brave and shoot Ghostface, because she has no other option. The town, they're all in their houses because there's a curfew, and like the atmosphere, the environment is set up really well. I felt like Wes Craven's spirit was in this movie. I felt like they did a good job at setting the tone from the beginning. I mean, it feels like a 2002, 2003 movie, that's coming out, and like summer, and it does have those nostalgic vibes. I like the fact that they did play around a little bit with modern things. I'll get into the technology aspect and the innovation aspect in a little bit, but they did play around, like they made reference to Bill, the Gen Z Billy. I felt like the jokes were in place. They didn't get out of hand, and they weren't like, we're so modern, we're so progress, we're so woke, because that's not what those movies are about. Oh yeah, and another thing, this movie, if you are really into, I guess not extreme, but like normal, violence, gore, guts, there's plenty of it in this movie. So, you won't be disappointed. It is a slasher. It lives, I guess you could say it does live up to its expectations based on its own genre, which is a slasher film. There are guts, there's blood, there's violence, there's hard hitting shots and everything. So it is pretty solid there too. And I could say for the most part, they do a pretty good job on the effects and everything. So now I want to talk a little bit about about the technology or the innovative aspect of it. I felt like the Scream movies. I remember watching Scream 4 in 2011. I think that's more or less when it came out. And ever since like Scream 2, 3, they've been kind of meta, where they're self-referential. They talk about themselves. There's even a movie in the movies called the Stab movies, which are basically the Scream movies but in the movie, right? And there's Stab 1, Stab 2, Stab 3, and I think back about, or I think about Wes Craven and how he made, like 8 or 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So, we're up to number 7 here. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like at least two more, like, 8 and 9. And I do want to say that I feel like they work best when they stay true to its like format, right? To its style. So when Scream 4 came out, I remember that I think that's the movie with the barn scenes and how Ghostface starts using cameras, right? He starts using technology. And I feel like in this movie, they use AI, uh, which is something that's currently out there for us right now, AI. So I feel like they did that really well because they did a reverse kind of ordeal here, but they bring back like the dead people from the other movies as AIs because but they're actually the real actors, right? And actresses. So I felt like that was really creative. And again, I think the Scream movies and like the narrative of the Scream movies is a narrative that doesn't shy away from adapting to the times, right? Like it will use elements that are out there, like innovations, technology. It will use that in the movie in a creative way, right? And I feel like that works really well. um Downsides of the movie, I guess you can say, um just a little, I really liked it. I really liked the fact that they didn't try to like add comic moments or humoristic moments, or they didn't try to make you laugh purposefully. Like Weapons, when at the end of the movie in Weapons you have all the kids running after the old lady. That's funny, and it's supposed to be funny. But again, it's a terror movie. It's a slasher in this case. It's that genre of terror. I define terror as some crazy guy with a knife trying to kill you, or crazy kids or whatever. Well, Weapons is a little bit more, you could say, supernatural, or in terms of horror. But I like the fact that they didn't try to make you laugh. There are moments that are kind of upbeat, less dark, less intense. There are a lot of jump scares, but the jump scares aren't like supernatural, scary jump scares. They're just like, a lot of sound, and a lot of, and then you see like Ghostface, or Ghostface pops out of nowhere and, tackles Sydney or tackles whoever. um but yeah, I did like the fact that they didn't add a lot of that in it. They didn't try to make it funny, because it's not supposed to be a comedy, right? At all. So yeah, it's like, don't try to make me laugh, just show me the action, show me the scary stuff, or whatever, in this case, the terror. um and what else? I think I was gonna mention something else. Any other downsides? I would say, no. And maybe making reference to the critics. I don't know if they were expecting something fresh, or I don't know, but I felt like I don't know if they played it safe by going back to its roots. Again, the format is very 2000. It has that nostalgic, vibe to it, but not nostalgic as in trying. I felt like it wasn't trying to be nostalgic on purpose. I felt like that's how those movies are supposed to be, and they did a good job. It's again, it could be a movie that was coming out in 2002, except for the whole AI ordeal. Everything else was good. Oh yeah, at the end, turns out, I was trying to figure out like who is the Ghostface killer, and it turns out that it's not the boyfriend, it's not the obvious suspects as usual. I thought it was Aaron, actually, at one point in the beginning, because I always try to think it's the person you least expect. But it turns out it was like this psychiatric patient. I guess he was a patient, but he also or he was some guy working at the psychiatric hospital. Um, but yeah, I guess that's where you have some narrative loops, maybe, because how was he able to, let them in when he was a patient, or I don't know. Anyway, it's that guy, and it's the mother of one of the kids that actually ends up dying. The kid is really into horror films and things like that, and scary movies. um but yeah, I guess I still don't really get why they were after Sydney, but at this point it's not really important. I feel like the ending is just always like, oh, it was that guy or those people, okay, and then they just have their reasons, they talk about their reasons, and Sydney ends up killing them anyway, and saving the day. So I feel like at this point, like, if we talk about like scary movies such as like Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger, or Halloween with Michael Myers, or Friday the 13th with Jason, like, it's not really important at this point who the bad guy is in the Scream movies, or who the bad person or the bad people are. um because what's fun is the movie, the process, like seeing all the action scenes, and the mystery, and it could and speculating, like the whole time. I felt like one of the big things, or one of the big hooks, was actually speculating like who it is, like, is it this person, is it that person, it could be that person, and I was trying to like stay focused on everybody, like what's this person doing, no, and like what that guy just did. There's a scene where the guy is like, doing AI videos, and it's like, yeah, that's too obvious. Obviously it's not him. That was even like a callback to the first movie, where I think, no, not the first movie, but in some of the other movies, I think there are moments where, like, the main suspect does something super suspicious, and it's like, and that's supposed to get everybody to be like, oh, you see, there's the proof, there's the evidence that it's him. But it's really not. It's just like, it's the suspect, and he's doing something, to make himself look even guiltier. But yeah, again, it could be anybody. And again, at this point, they all have their reasons for hating Sydney. I was even thinking, like, at one point, it wouldn't surprise me if, like, in Scream 8 or Scream 9, if there is gonna be a Scream 8 or Scream 9, it turns out to be like Gail, right? Gail gets her chance to do her interview to Sydney in this one. So it doesn't really get completed. It's not really a full blown interview. Uh you know they're trying to get Ghostface to call Sydney. But I did find it kind of funny how she's like, okay, let's do that interview that you've been waiting for years, for decades now, for 30 years, I guess, because I think it has been 30 years. I think Scream 1 came out in 96, 97. But anyway, yeah, solid 8. And yeah, it could be anybody in the next Scream movies. Just like in any Scream movie, it could be someone from the past, someone that's right there. It could be because, they're outshadowed, or um, because Sydney did something to them or ignored them or whatever, right? But yeah, we could say Scream is back with this one. It was good, solid 8, and I guess that's all I got for this one. So I'll see y'all in the next review. Peace.